Welcome to MegaBucks Radio. Conversations with successful entrepreneurs, sharing their tips and strategies for success. Real-world ideas that can put MegaBucks in your bank account. Here's your host, Nina Hershberger.
Well, hello there, and welcome to today's episode. You are in for a huge treat. I have Burke on the phone with me. He's an expert on how to monetize Facebook groups. It's something that I had sent out a message to a particular group, and I said, look, I'm going to tell you the backstory in a second, but I've got this group, and it's almost 20. At that time, it was about 25,000. Now it's nearing on to 27,000. And I said, how do you monetize that? And there were a few people that reached out to me. Graves was one of them. So Graves, welcome to today's show.
Oh, thank you, Nina. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.
Now, tell the background. As I understand, you kind of were a magician at a young age.
Holy cow, yeah. So as a teenager, I had a passion for performing close-up magic, and I worked at a magic shop and created magic tricks. In fact, before I understood what an information product was, even though I knew who Dan was, I was creating magic tricks and selling them to other magicians, and I didn't even realize it at the time, So, yeah, I started out as a magician, creating material and performing at local businesses and restaurants and stuff like that up in the Pacific Northwest. And I ended up performing at places like Xerox and Nike and Adidas and HP, all these corporate events. And that was kind of my foray into entrepreneurship of my own offering. It was exciting.
Well, you obviously still don't make a living. You probably do magic, I'm sure. It's probably in your blood, but you're not making a living at this moment as a magician. So what happened? Where did you go from there?
Yeah, it was kind of a long and winding road, but to sum it up, I met a spiritual teacher at an early age, and I went to India and spent 21 days in silence in my early 20s. And so I kind of did this whole self-discovery phase and came back and said, I really love entrepreneurship and loved selling, loved marketing. And so kind of in my late 20s, was selling things on eBay and flipping things on Craigslist. This was like 2006. It wasn't really popular back then like it is now, but it was around. Holy cow, an interesting story. I'll try to bottom line it. Was my eBay auctions, I would use a little tool called Audio Generator back in the day by Alex Mondosian and Rick Raditz and Armin Morin. These guys were early internet marketing guys. They were who the Ryan Dices and the Russell Brunsons are today. And I would put a little snippet of audio code where I was just reading my auction. And I would use Dan Kennedy style copywriting for the bullet points. And I would read it to people, and my eBay auctions would sell for twice as much as the same item was on another auction on eBay, just because I made it so much easier to consume for people.
So let me see if I understand this. So your auction description was not only written out, but there was an audio button that they could listen to it?
Yeah, and it would automatically play. So I would record the description. I would read the headline and read the bullet points and all of that. So once they clicked on it, it would automatically play, which is probably really annoying. I had one guy commented, he sent me a message. He said, holy cow, your auction started talking to me in the middle of the night because it was reading, right? It was my voice. And he was like, it startled me because I was in my office by myself in the middle of the night. The guy was like a lawyer or something. And I thought that was just the greatest thing as a 26-year-old kid. Like, oh, look at this. This is fantastic.
So you got hooked on marketing. You got hooked on direct response marketing with Dan Kennedy type style. So fast forward. So now you, at some point, you had an agency. and you were going out and you were getting clients.
Yes. So I had an agency doing search engine optimization, SEO, pay-per-click advertising, Google PPC, and it was right around the time when Facebook was also just launching their ad platform, where everybody could use it. And we were doing direct response marketing for personal injury lawyers and doing lead generation for personal injury lawyers. It was absolutely fascinating, and it's one of the hardest industries aside from probably mortgages because the click costs are so high. I mean, we were paying $50 to $100 per click, depending on the city we were in and the keyword we were targeting, just to drive traffic to a website, and then having to convert them into either an inbound phone call or a name, email, and phone number that our paralegals, our clients' paralegals could reach out to. And we were doing that for lawyers all over the United States. It was really exciting. And it was really hard because it was always changing, But
then you transitioned. You flipped the switch somewhere.
I did. So I had been doing a lot of done for you and even some consulting and coaching over the years. And I had this really interesting thing that I was doing for people to bankroll them into my agency. I would run a special campaign where we would go out to their past clients who hadn't bought from them. I guess Dan would call it a reactivation campaign. And so we were running this kind of reactivation campaign. And, in 24, 48 hours, these prospects were making $3,000, $6,000, $8,000, some as high as $12,000 just by running this little campaign. And that was giving them the money, the cash, to pay for the first month, 2 months, 3 months of my services. So I was, doing that kind of results in advance style, here's cash up front. And I was giving that away for free just to get clients, not realizing the value that was. And a friend of mine said, why aren't you charging for this? You're giving them so much value. Because I was, between you and me, I was complaining because a couple of the people took the money and instead of hiring me, they went and bought big screen TVs and stuff like that. In the long run, that's a better stance. It was better for me that they went and did that because I learned they weren't going to be a good client for me in the long run. But it was so heartbreaking to have that happen. And so I started charging for this, and it became the birth of what I call a back-end agency. And that's a term I learned from another mentor of mine, Travis Sago, really brilliant guy. Back-end agency where everybody's fighting and scrapping for the front end of the marketing budget. Pay me and I'll do your emails. Pay me and I'll run your PPC ads and your Facebook ads. Pay me and I'll do your web design. And all that money's coming out the front end of the business, and there's a lot of risk. And the business owners are fighting over trying to get those crumbs, and the agency owners are fighting over trying to get those crumbs. And I shifted to the back end. Nobody's working the back end. Very few people are. There's very little risk there for the client. And there's a lot of money to be made by running these back end style campaigns. And we were doing it in email at first. And then Travis is the guy I learned to do it on Facebook groups. There's so much money to be made on these Facebook groups because nobody knows what to do with them. And there's all these people and they're passionate about what they're talking about. And so we just took what we were doing with email and started doing it in Facebook groups. And holy cow, it worked really well.
Which is where you and I. So let me tell how Graves and I. So I posted. So my husband and I built a house a year and a half ago. And before we built the house, we sold our other house in another city a couple hours from here. And I decided I wanted to sell it myself. So that meant, of course, you've got to declutter, neutralize, and stage. Most of it was pretty well already done, but staging was something I thought, that's going to be fun. One of the things I staged was my kitchen table. and my dining room table. I went to Goodwill, went to any place I could go, and I found interesting kind of dishes and different things, and I set the table. Fast forward when we're down here. March of this year, we're recording this in 2020. We all know what happened. COVID hits. And so we're kind of stuck in our houses, and we're kind of looking around. And, of course, I've got clients, and I'm doing things, but, I'm looking for kind of a different little hobby. And I start pulling out these dishes. And then I go on Facebook Marketplace, and I buy more dishes. And I go to Goodwill, and I buy more dishes. And I started what I called, didn't know it was a term, but I called tablescaping. And sure enough, it's an official term. And one day on my Facebook feed, somebody says, did you know there are Facebook groups about tablescaping? I'd never even thought about it. Don't know why I didn't think about it, because it makes sense. So I went and searched. And sure enough, I found, now there's multiple ones, but the one I particularly honed in on at that time, actually I've probably been in there now 3 or 4 weeks, but just a couple weeks ago, they had just shy over 25,000 people. I'm thinking, holy cow. And then fast forward to just today, before Grace and I got on this call, I looked it up, and they are closing in on 26,700. I mean, they are exploding. It is fascinating. So yeah. I put in this Dan Kennedy group. I said, does anybody know how to monetize these Facebook? Now, I don't own the group. I'm not an administrator of the group. I'm not anything. But I thought, I wonder if there's got to be money. I always heard, the size of your list, however many are on your list, you can figure $1 a name. So I thought, gosh, is that 25, 26, 27,000? Is that a month? Is that a whatever? And so Graves was kind enough to reach out to me. So Graves, I know you're an expert in this, and when we get done with this podcast, this radio program, if you're listening to this and you want to hire Graves, God bless you. You're going to go to the master, but he is going to be kind enough to share with us the inside secrets of how to monetize. And so we're going to take my example. So Graves, I got a group of almost 27,000 I belong to. What happens next?
Yeah.
Actually, we probably should start at how to find those kind of groups, I think.
Yeah, we can see you're in an interesting and exciting position because you stumbled on it by accident. But some of your listeners might want to do this for other people. They might want to tap into their expertise as a marketer and a direct response marketer and an advertiser and create a new arm to their existing business. And so that can be really exciting because there's so many of these groups, and Facebook is really pushing building groups and people joining groups. I mean, there are TV commercials from Facebook how there are groups on XYZ niche or topic, so they really are trying to create more real estate that they will then be able to put ads in front of and stuff like that, but also build goodwill on their platform and keep people on their platform. However you want to see that as nefarious or non-nefarious is up to you. No judgment from me on today's call. But the first thing is, if you have a hobby or a passion, that's the best place to start, in my opinion. If you have knowledge of something already, that's a really good place to start. I'll talk a little bit about how to go find it if you don't have knowledge or a passion just yet. But before we get into that, I would like to talk about the stance I think we all need to have when doing this type of work for the group owners or the group admins. And it's different than a lot of people think, right? I don't know about you, but when I was growing up doing done-for-you services, I always thought of myself as kind of a service provider, where I'm going to write email campaigns and I'm going to run and write Google PPC ads and Facebook ads, and I'm going to do the ad copy and I'm going to create the landing pages. And I thought I was doing this service for my clients. And I mentioned his name earlier, Travis. He really got me onto this, and it it was because I read a book by a man named Garrett Gunderson, which Travis suggested, called Killing Sacred Cows. And Garrett talks about being an investor and being a good steward. And I was like, holy cow, what a really cool way. And so I thank Garrett and I thank Travis for this, because it changed my life in terms of looking at the relationships that I'm now building. Am I the lowly service provider where they're above me and I'm like, yes, Lord, your wish is my command? Or can we partner together and be equals? And I get to use my experience and my expertise and my decades of knowledge and bring that to the table with their asset. And it becomes this really nice pairing of investing together in their business. So I think the more we can step into that investor role and look at things how an investor would look at things, right? What's the risk here? How can I mitigate that risk? What's the asset? How is the asset being utilized? How can I utilize it differently? All of those types of things allow you to use your expertise as a marketer and as a salesperson or even an advertiser, and really bring something to the table where we're providing a lot of good and we're being a really good steward of their assets. And I really
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So how do you find those groups? You start with the passion.
Yeah, if you can, right? If you already have a passion, that's the best place to start. And there's a couple places. I like to start with either Facebook. Well, first Facebook, and Facebook has their search bar on the desktop. It's easier on desktop than mobile to do this. And you type in the niche that you're interested in. So maybe it's tablescaping, maybe it's sewing, quilting, maybe it's magic tricks, right? It could be maybe it's marketing. You type that into the search box. And as of today, on the left-hand side, there's a list of filters you can click on. And about halfway down, a little more than halfway down, there's a group filter. And you can click on that group filter and it'll drop down a little bit more information. One of the things you can search for is open groups. And you click this little toggle button and it'll show you only the groups that are open. Because with Facebook, there's private groups, there's open groups, and there's hidden groups. Hidden won't show up at all, but private will show up. The problem with private is that you can't see any of the posts. And I want you to be able to see some of the posts. So I suggest toggling on open groups and then just searching through. And some of the information Facebook will show you are how many members there are, how many how many new posts per week or per day it's getting. And you want to look at larger groups that are getting a lot of posts per week or per day, because that means they're active. There's plenty of groups that have big numbers, but they're not active anymore. Because one of the things is these groups get built up and the admin gets so tired. We're going to talk about this in a little bit, right? We're going to solve a problem not only for their members, but also for the admin or the group owner. They just get so tired of having to always create new content and moderate and do all of that the group just kind of fizzles out and dies eventually. So you want to look for active groups, preferably open. And that's when searching on Facebook. There's another really cool trick you can use, which is going to Google. It seems totally counterintuitive that you would go to Google to search for a Facebook group. But if you type in best Facebook groups on, and then insert your niche on email marketing, or best Facebook groups on tablescaping or sewing or quilting or whatever, right? You will find that people are regularly putting out posts, blog posts or Quora posts, or even Facebook posts where they're collating and gathering the best groups. And so all the work is done for you already. You can go and you can become a member, or you can search, if they're open, you can search through those groups. So those are the two hacks that I use to find these groups. Another one, which is less of a hack and it's more work, is simply just asking your friends. So you go to your own Facebook profile and you type in, I'm looking for somebody who has a group on blank. Does anybody know somebody? Can you put me in touch with them? And that can be a really nice way for your friends to introduce you to other group owners on a specific topic. Because friends love helping their friends. So they get to be the hero and you get to not have to do all the Google or the Facebook searching if you want. So
which is kind of what happened. Which is kind of what happened to me. It was a friend who told me about tablescaping groups.
Nice. See, there you go. So we can be proactive and ask our friends, hey, do you know anybody that runs a group on blank? So that can be a fun way to do it. It's just a little bit slower, right? We end up having to be reactive instead of proactive in that regard. So, but once you...
Okay, now I've got the group. So now I've found my tablescaping group. Still thinking, how can I monetize? So what's the next step then?
Yeah. So you found your tablescaping group, and this group is growing by leaps and bounds. I mean, it's grown 1,000, 2,000 just in the last week or something like that, right? So that's a really healthy group. That's great. There's two ways that we want to go about this, but it's two ways to the same thing. So two sides to the same coin. And the coin is, we're a problem solver, right? We're coming from the stance of investor. We're going to invest our knowledge and our expertise to solve two different problems. One problem is the members. So the people join the group to solve problems. Those are the members. But there's another person that has that group that has a really big glaring problem. And we want to solve that as well. And that's the admin. And I hinted at it a little bit earlier. We'll circle back around to it. So the first place to start is by finding out what problems are the members having on a regular basis. Now, this used to be a lot easier back in the days of bulletin boards and forums and stuff like that, because you could just search that stuff and you could filter by posts that had the most comments and stuff like that. Now with Facebook, you can't do the searching, the filtering as easy, but you can search. So when you go inside the group, if it's an open group, you can actually, there's a little separate search bar to search inside that group. And if you search single words, and I'll give you a list, they're kind of interrogative words. I know that's a big word. It would be if you were being interrogated. Those are the types of words you want to search, because that's how people type in asking for help. And here's the words. The first one is what. So when people are trying to solve problems, they'll often use what to start their post. Another one is does. So people will ask, does anybody know where I can get XYZ? Or does anybody know how I can solve ABC? So does is a really good word. Where can I find a China pattern similar to this for your tablescaping, for example? So where is it? And you just have to do one word at a time, because it'll pull up all the posts. Another good word is how. How can I solve blank might be what somebody types in. We just need to type in how. Why is another good one. Why would I do blah, 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 right? So if people are trying to learn more about a specific niche, why is it so hard to find a specific type of silverware? Or why is this pattern more expensive than this other pattern of China for tablescaping? Why is really good. Which, so a lot of times if people are trying to solve a problem, they'll bring two different potentials. Which one of these is better? And they'll want the group to give them advice because they're scared of making the wrong choice, right? So which should I go with, X or Y? Or maybe they'll post two pictures of a table. Which one do you like more? And And then the last one in my list is who. Who can be a really good one, especially if people are looking for suppliers or vendors. Who do you suggest I reach out to for this type of pattern or this type of silverware or this type of stemware, that type of thing. And again, we're not trying to solve individual problems, right? Because Facebook will give you a huge list. We're just trying to see which questions are recurring. So if there's a specific pattern we see popping up with an actual China pattern or a stemware style or a silverware style, and we notice that people are asking it a lot, that's a really good sign that there's a problem to solve there for people, right? That's number one. Number two, one of the things Facebook shows us with these questions or posts people are making is how many comments are on it. And we want to look for the posts that get a lot of comments because that means other people are intrigued or trying to solve it, the same exact problem as well. Or they might have a solution, in which case we can go learn about the various solutions that are out there. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, yes.
Wonderful. So that's how to look for problems on Facebook inside the groups themselves. Now you can only do that in open groups unless you're a member. You can kind of do it in closed groups, but you have to become a member. So you have to request access and be approved and all of that. And then you can do that whole search thing in those closed groups as well. But there's another trick that I like, and this is an old Jay Abraham thing that I learned years ago. And it's to go to Amazon and you type in the books section, you type in the niche. So tablescaping in books or sewing or quilting or magic tricks, right? And then you go and you look at the top rated books in those sections and you're going to look at two things. The first place to look is the table of contents. What is the author of the books that are selling the best solving in their table of contents? What problems are they trying to solve? The second thing you look at is the ad copy for the book itself. Sometimes they'll put bullet points. What problems are they saying they solve there? And then the third place you look, and I love this, is you look at the reviews. And you not only look at the good reviews to find out what people are happy they had solved, but you look at the negative reviews of what people said they wished had been solved by the book. And now you've got something that no one else has. You have problems that people are not able to find a solution for. And you can bring that to the table and say, hey, I've got a solution for this problem. So that's one of my favorite tricks. I wish I had thought of it, but it's a Jay Abraham thing.
Well, you know what? You were smart enough to use it. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
You know what, Graves, I'm looking at the time, and we are coming to the end. We haven't even finished. We got a whole list of other things. Would you be willing to come back next week, and let's keep going, because I still want to know, how can I make money? You're telling me how to find a group. You're telling me find out what problems the group has that you could solve. And obviously now we're going to get to the main part of the meat, which is, okay, how do I monetize with that information? Would you be willing to come back for next week?
Yeah, I think that would be absolutely a blast to come back and start talking about the monetization side.
Perfect. Hey, you know what? I know there's going to be people that would like to reach out. They're saying, okay, I'd like to just partner with him. How should they reach out to you? Do you want a phone call? Do you want an email?
I really enjoy email simply because I can get back to it at an easier rate, and it allows people to not have to feel pressured of talking to me. I'm a really easygoing person. I'm not going to hard sell anybody on partnering together. I want to invest together in a relationship, so I like email. Shall I give my email out now?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's Graves, Graves, just how it sounds there, at double, DOUBLE, lift, LIFT, media, MEDIA.com. So Graves at doubleliftmedia.com.
All right. Well, we're at the end of this radio broadcast, so stay tuned. But go out in the next week and look for those open Facebook groups that you might be able to monetize.
Thank you for listening to MegaBucks Radio with Nina Hershberger. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or to listen to past episodes, visit megabucksradio.com.